So I kind of just want to give a basic intro about me. I first met Tim and Lindsay when I was in seminary in Louisville, Kentucky. We actually ended up working at the same college ministry, though not at the same time. Also worked there with Miss Brooke Swift. And I moved to Charlotte to be a part of this church. And so I was one of the original people that picked up my life and moved down here to help start Citizens. Currently, I work at a mission organization. I help onboard new missionaries to the field. And I am also single, and I am 30, and I have really been thinking about this idea of singleness for probably about the last 7 years or so. So kind of the framework that I'm going to lay out for you guys is really the culmination of many, many years of research and study for me. So it's exciting that I am able to share this with you. This is a topic I'm super passionate about. And yeah, I'm just excited to dive in. So we are here because oftentimes people come to Tim saying, "Are you ever going to address this topic?" And he says, "Yes, we'll do a formations class." And this is one of those topics for our church. People really want to know, how do I think about singleness rightly? The reality is about 40% of our church is single. And we want to equip you to think about your singleness in a way that is shaped by the Bible and not by cultural norms. So if you look around this room, you will note that we actually have a mixed group of both single and married people. And this is actually something that's very intentional. So if you are here and you are married, we want to equip you to love and care for the entire church family. If we are a family, the way that we say that we are, then what happens to one member affects all of us. So that's really one thing that I love about this church. We want to care for each other, even people who are in a different season of life than we are. So I want to start off by thinking about two postures that we tend to have, whether you're married or you're single, when we talk and think about singleness, okay? So the first posture is single and loving it. The second posture is single and hating it, okay? So if you fall into this first camp, the single and loving it camp, you might actually experience a sense of freedom when you think about your singleness. You know, you can spend your time, your money, your talents on really whatever you want. And maybe your parents or the person you're dating, when they start asking you, "Oh, are you ever going to get married? Or are you going to settle down?" Maybe you start to feel really smothered and really defensive at that question. And if you're married, maybe you kind of take this posture if you look at single people around you or in your group, and you think, "Oh, wow, enjoy it while it lasts." So that's the single and loving it group. The single and hating it group. If you fall into the second category, every day you might just go through life with kind of like a low-grade grief that your life just like doesn't look the way that you thought it would. Each year that passes, the stakes start to feel a little bit higher. Singleness might start to feel kind of all-consuming. You feel like you're just waiting for your real life to start, and honestly, you're just like tired. You know that marriage comes with its own set of struggles, but honestly, you would trade the highs of singleness for the lows of marriage literally any day. If you're married, you might look back in your life when you were single, and you like can't fathom how you functioned as a person without your spouse. And the reality is that you probably fall somewhere on a spectrum between these two positions. And where you land can even change from day to day. Even as I walk through these categories, I'm sure that you have questions rising up in your head of, isn't it okay to desire to be married? Or is it bad if I don't really want to get married? Or, you know, there is objectively more freedom with singleness. Is it wrong to enjoy that? I think in general, it can just be really hard for us to think about singleness rightly. And maybe in your past experience, you know, your church tradition has not handled this in the most helpful way. You know, we all kind of know the stereotype of if you're single and under 30, you're put in a young adults group and people just kind of cross their fingers and hope you pair up. And if you're over 30, you're just kind of put in the weird singles group and it's odd ducks and nobody really knows what to do with you. So we carry a lot of personal and historical baggage into this discussion. But also there are just a lot of misconceptions about singleness. And sadly, these are perpetuated within the broader church, and it fuels our thinking about the subject. So I want to lay out just a couple of those misconceptions for you. Misconception number one is that Singleness makes you a second-class citizen in the family of God. Singleness makes you a second-class citizen. Sometimes it can feel like just so much of life, especially the Christian life, just centers around the nuclear family and can leave single people just feeling like they don't quite fit within that picture. Misconception number 2 is that singleness is just bad for you. It's just not good. And you might not intrinsically think that it is bad, but if somebody talked about the goodness of singleness, maybe that idea just kind of makes you feel uncomfortable. So second misconception, singleness is bad. The third misconception is that singleness requires a special or supernatural gifting. Maybe you hear about the gift of singleness and you understand in theory that there is some biblical category for it, but it's just not you. You just don't have that gift. And then the last misconception, which I think is interesting, is that singleness is a waste of your sexuality. So God made us to be sexual beings with sexual desire, and it just feels like a basic human experience. And so if you hold fast to a biblical sexual ethic, it can just feel like a waste, like your singleness just kind of feels like God is playing a mean joke on you. So to recap, misconception 1, singleness makes you a second-class citizen in the family of God. Misconception 2, singleness is bad. Misconception 3, it requires a supernatural gifting, and it wastes your sexuality. So what we're going to do, we're going to pause here. I realize this is just at the beginning, but we're going to pause here, and I want you to get with a few people around you and discuss kind of where you are on that spectrum between single and loving it and single and hating it, and also discuss if there's any particular misconception that you struggle with. So we're going to take 10, 15 minutes, discuss that. Feel free to grab more food, grab a drink, and then we'll dive back in.